Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Bible. Today we are continuing our series with chapter 23 in the book of Deuteronomy. And we got a roller coaster for you today. And before we begin, let us, of course, partake in the Lord's burning bush. Nothing quite like smoking out of a bong. And so, right off the gate, we have some very interesting information. First two verses, we are actually, I'm just fucking read it to you. Verse 1. He that is wounded in the stones, or testicles, because stones is a medieval term for balls. He that is wounded in the stones, or hath his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. So what does that mean? Well, basically someone who is a eunuch or someone who has been permanently hurt in the testicles. And it's specifically referring to men, obviously, because they're not saying anything about women. It says people with these physical deformities are not allowed to be Israelites. That's basically what they're saying. Verse 2. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. So someone who is born out of wedlock. And not just that, curiously enough. And then, that's also, we'll get to that in a second. Bastards are not only not allowed to become Israelites, but it says, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. And if I understand that correctly, that means that that bastard and 10 generations after, presumably they're all born within wedlock, I guess. Otherwise, having a bastard starts it over, or just for that generation, I suppose. I wonder how that works. Very, very odd. But yes, for 10 generations after that bastard child is born, or 9, I should say, that bastard and 9 more generations of souls are not allowed to become Israelites. And that even makes it weirder, because that's just because no one chooses to be a bastard. No one decides, hey, you know what, I'm going to be born to a broken family. That sounds fun. Now, of course, within certain beliefs, some people actually say that we do choose our own lives, and to a certain extent, I can sort of. I mean, it's taken me a long time and a lot of theorizing, and I'm not fully convinced by it because I haven't seen the hard evidence for it, but I am also somewhat of this persuasion as well. I do think that we have multiple lives and that we choose some of what we go through. Not everything, but some of what we go through in our lives. And it is possible, I think it's possible, that we do choose our parents, but I don't know that for sure. Because, unless you're going in to specifically learn something, and, and not everyone, not everyone knows what's going to happen. I do think there is a, not a grand design per se, but I do think there is, a way of things, a way things are generally meant to go. And that is in a progressive, evolutionary, harmoniously evolving organism. That's basically what everything is. We're all growing up. And, if we take that, in a spiritual or metaphorical sense, we're doing that in our entire lives. But for some reason, the Almighty, in this version, whether, if someone chooses to be a bastard, then they're choosing to be cut off from Israel. Okay, but let's go with the benefit of the doubt, because I'm pretty sure in these religious circles, they don't believe people choose who they're born to, at least most of the time. So these souls, we're going to say these souls are not choosing to be bastards, or to be the son of a bastard, or daughter of a bastard for 10 generations. They are not choosing this, but they're all going to hell. I mean, where else would they be going? They're not the chosen ones. In fact, they're barred from joining the Israelites. A lot of people could join the Israelites, can become, or can join the religion of Judaism, but certain people can't, and certain races can't. We're going to talk about some of those too. In fact, we're going to talk about those next. And it's so unfortunate, because if we're going off of the concept that most people agree with, that no one chooses the things that happen to them, that no one chooses who their parents are, no one chooses the events that happens in their life. If we're going off of that assumption, why is God being biased towards these things that are happening to these souls that these souls have no control over? Getting hurt in the testicles? Having their wee-wee dismembered? Who chooses that? Or being a bastard? Who chooses that as part of their life path? But God, in His infinite wisdom, knows that's going to happen. So, according to these verses, He deliberately sets it up for people to go to hell. I guess because hell needs numbers. I don't know. Of course, you can make many different arguments for that, but I'm speaking a lot of this from I'm saying a lot of these things from in a critical way upon the conservative Christian aspect that I was raised on of the King James Version. But God doesn't just limit it to what physically happens to you and who you happen to be born with when it comes to, wedlock. I mean, oh, God. Can you imagine if these sorts of rules were applied today? Imagine if this was the real religion, how many people today would not be able to go to heaven because they couldn't become Jews or Israelites because they're bastards, because they were born out of wedlock? I mean, I'm lucky. I wasn't born out of wedlock, but there's a whole lot of people out there that are. So God's just like, what, really into cranking out people that by their own volition will never be able to get into heaven? That's messed up, man. That's really messed up. But there are a couple nations, so you could say in a way races, because I mean it starts off. I mean I don't know how science explains races. I mean I think the concept of races, I don't know what the proper word is to call all that, because I don't agree with racism or anything like that. Shit's terrible. But so I'm not really sure how to categorize it when it comes to these nations. I mean, they could be a different skin color, they might not, but the point is they are different nations. And it is two of them specifically. And God says, an Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever. Now, I am not exactly sure how this would even apply. Like, do you have to apply to become a Jew or Israelite? Like in this case, if, let's say, I were an Amorite or Moabite, would I have to apply to become an Israelite or a Jew like 10 generations in advance? Like, how are Ammonites and Moabites supposed to convert to the one true religion if they were supposed to put in a reserve space 10 generations ago? And like, how is that good advertising? Like, they're going to tell their kids, okay, look, your kid, his kid, and so on for 9 more generations after me can't get into heaven. But if you guys tell the 10th Ammonite or Moabite, whatever the fuck we are, if you tell them about Judaism and shit, they can get in. And their souls will be saved. How is that fair? How is that just? And what is God's reasoning behind doing this to the Ammonites and Moabites, if they even bother trying to convert? Which, like, why would you? Why would you, like, how is that an attractive feature? It's like this. It's crazy because Christianity is all about conversion and converting people. Well, maybe not all of Christianity, but a lot of it emphasizes converting. And really, the Old Testament, when you look at it and you look at the way the rules are set up and everything, it is way more designed for a conquering type of a religion as opposed to a converting type of religion. They really, really don't seem to care a whole lot if people convert or don't convert. They have their rules about how to do it, but hey, if you don't fall within the stipulations, you're lucky they don't have gas chambers. Hey, I said that. They're on the same level. I'm sorry, but when you look at it with how they treat people, I mean, yeah, they got treated the same way when people, like, imagine if the Israelites actually did this stuff. A lot of people will argue that they didn't, a lot of historians, and there will be plenty of historians, that, especially Christian, that will argue that it's all true. And if it is all true, ladies and gentlemen, and people that identify in between, they're no better. They're no better than the N to the A to the Z to the I's. Because they do a lot of the same stuff. And we're going to see even more of some of those racist things that are promoted by Yahweh and Moses. But why does God say to do this to Ammon and Moab? Well, just to make it, simple. Because they met you not, verse 4, they met you not with bread and with water in the way when ye came forth out of Egypt. Because they didn't help you when you left Egypt. That's half the reason. And the other half, and because they hired against thee Balaam the son of Beor of Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse thee. And now that I think about it, it's interesting. These days we are seeing more and more and realizing more and more how often what the leaders of a country do does not usually, maybe not usually, but they definitely do not always reflect the wishes and opinions of the common people under them. So, as far as we know, the people of Ammon and Moabite and Moab, they could have been down to help the Israelites, maybe if they had been told properly, or they hadn't been lied to by their kings or whatever, or they, maybe they just didn't know. Who knows? Who knows what was actually going on through the people's mind? But when it comes down to it, they were run by kings, and it was the kings ultimately who decided and ran the country. So, if God were really trying to be fair, he should be aiming the punishment at the people actually responsible, not the people who happen to be victimly brainwashed or lied to by the people who are actually responsible. You get what I'm saying? I'm saying Ammon and Moab didn't do nothing. Their kings did. Their kings brought that crap on themselves. They brought the negative reputation. It was the king of Moab that hired this priest called Balaam, who supposedly had a talking donkey, but fun fact, every time Balaam is mentioned in the Bible, you never hear about the talking donkey except for the one time in the Old Testament where the story took place. Which really makes me think that never happened in the first place, and that it was an afterthought added by the Israelites. Balaam is he's a very popular figure in the Bible, but only for being hired to curse and then turning around and blessing Israel. Not for his talking donkey. Talking donkey is never mentioned again, except from that first time and story involving him. And God has never done a talking animal since. Just throwing that out there. So we have no proof that it ever happened. And here's the proof right here that God really has no interest in saving the Ammonites and Moabites. Right here in verse 6. Thou shalt not seek their peace nor their prosperity all thy days forever. Really doesn't go along with that whole love thy neighbor as thyself concept, huh? Nor does it go along with the concept of I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. Because, unless these are two different deities, God changes his mind. From saying, it's going to be forever, to, it's not going to be forever. No, I'm going to send my son to commit self-unaliving, basically. I mean, we can talk about why he actually did that, but there's a lot of speculation why, and if he even actually allowed it to happen. I mean, who knows? There's rumors that it never even happened and that he actually lived a long time after, or maybe even somehow survived, perhaps. But that, hey, I heard Jesus didn't even die till he was in his 40s or something, after he had multiple children. That's out there. But yeah, Ammon and Moab, when it comes to the Israelites are meant to never seek their peace or their prosperity. The Ammonites and Moabites can come to them for conversion, but it's going to take them 10 generations before someone makes it in. But other than that, God is like, no, let them die, let them go to hell, leave them be, because they offended me that one time. Well, their king did, and I held the entire nation responsible. That's crazy. And you would think that Egypt, the nation that held Israel captive and enslaved for quite the extensive period, you would think God would have the same or even a harsher set of words to say. But no. In fact, God has the opposite to say. He says, thou shalt... Well, hold on. We're leading up to that. Thou shalt not abhor the Edomites, for he is thy brother. Relation through Esau. Oh yeah, and then we come to the Egyptian. Thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, because thou wast a stranger in his land. The children that are begotten of them shall enter into the congregation of the Lord in their third generation. So only, technically, okay, so it's only 9 generations of Ammon and Moab that have to go to hell before the 10th one can get in. And with Egypt, only 2 generations have to go to hell before the 3rd one can become a Jew or an Israelite or whatever. They try to make them sound one and the same, and I prefer they did not. Because religion is not a race. No matter what anyone tells you. But yeah, the hypocrisy is insane here, because, I mean, come on. They're saying, don't hate the Egyptian because you were a stranger in their land? Oh, I'm sorry. Are the Israelites not also strangers in the land of Ammon and Moab? What's the fucking difference? One of them enslaved you for an extensive period of time. Oh, you only need to suffer through 10 generations before the 3rd one can be allowed to join, if they want to come and join. Not saying anything about not seeking out peace and prosperity for them either. Oh, but when we come to Ammon, they didn't give you supplies, and they hired a mean man to say nasty words. 10 generations before those motherfuckers can enter into my kingdom and my special people. Where's the logic? Where's the logic? The Egyptians even went out and, I believe the Ammonites and Moabites also fought against Israel, but so did Egypt. I mean, Egypt, honestly, they treated Israel so much worse compared to Ammon and Moab. I mean, the way Ammon and Moab acted, they acted more superstitious and terrified. They were scared of the Israelites. That's why they didn't want to have anything to do with them. It was like, oh, we don't know what the fuck these fuckers know. Some magic or, some supernatural powers or something, but we're going to counter that shit. We're calling our own holy man. Apparently that holy man, I wonder if he got paid off. I don't know. I have no way to prove that. That's just a theory that just popped into my head just now. What if he was paid? What if he was... I mean, I don't know. I mean, what would... I have no idea what the real world logic would be for Balaam not doing what... I mean, he not only refused to do what the king of Moab told him to do, he actually showed up for the job. And then did the complete opposite of what the job was. And somehow still didn't lose his head. Very fishy story there. I don't think we're getting the full picture of what happened there. I think there's some details that we are missing or being lied to about. We're definitely being lied to about, because I ain't buying that talking donkey bullshit. Now here's an interesting change of pace for you. I bet you never thought the Bible would have ever talked about. We are discussing the military. I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what this means. Verse 9, when the host goeth forth against thine enemies, then keep thee from every wicked thing. I kind of feel like there should be a list provided after that verse, verse 9. But we're not really given a list of what every wicked thing is. So, I mean, I imagine that can be found in other Israeli Jewish religious texts that are not in the Bible. Because there are other Jewish texts that are not part of the Bible, believe it or not, that are actively used and read in synagogues all over the world. Yeah, they got a lot more than just the Torah. You've no idea. Some of it's terrifying, if you know where to look. But this isn't so terrifying. In fact, it's actually kind of on the good side, I would say. And I would hope you would agree, actually. I would actually hope you would agree with these Bible verses. I'm actually saying that. You'll see why. If there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of uncleanness that chanceth him by night, then he shall go abroad out of the camp. He shall not come within the camp. What is that talking about? Keep listening. But it shall be when evening cometh on, he shall wash himself with water, and when the sun is down, he shall come into the camp again. Thou shalt have a place also without the camp, whither thou shalt go forth abroad. Any clues yet? No? This next verse should give it away. And thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon, and it shall be when thou wilt ease thyself abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shalt turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. Yes, God is literally telling people to take a shovel in the military. This is a military camp. to take a shovel, have your weapon with you, walk outside of the camp, dig a hole, shit in it, and then cover it up. I know, right? Like, honestly, the only thing missing here is don't forget the toilet paper and hand sanitizer. I don't know what they used for toilet paper back then. Probably... You know what? I don't want to think about it. But the reason... Is it sanitary? Well, of course it is. But what is the reason given? Verse 14. For the Lord thy God walketh in the midst of the camp to deliver thee, and to give up thine enemies before thee. Therefore shall thy camp be holy, that he see no unclean thing in thee, and turn away from thee. Well, heck, what if they have diarrhea? And they can't, and they're like camped in, and they're, where that individual with diarrhea is, happens to be like in the thick of the campground. I mean, maybe they had plans for that. I don't know. But I'm just loving the concept of God walking through the Israelite camp and then stepping in someone's shit. And that being the reason he's like, fuck this. I am not going with you guys tomorrow. Y'all can suck it. Y'all can die. Y'all can go to hell or heaven early, whatever, you know, however angry he's feeling that day is just like, I have shit on my holy sandals. I cannot do this. You guys are fucked. Yucky, yucky coo, as Jar Jar Binks would say. I just think it's hilarious. That's the reason. That's the reason God is going to ditch y'all. That's the reason God wants you to cover your poo. Not because it's sanitary, but because he's going to walk by and he doesn't want to step in it. Or smell it. It's all about him. It's not about you and your health. It's about him and his glory and everything involving the people he talks to. Because he don't talk to you. He don't talk to people with hurt wee-wees or midgets. No, he only talks to the special born people in the special born nation of les Jews. Now, do you remember, well, you know, this is your first video, or, you know, you're kind of new to the channel, you may have missed it, but there are passages in the Old Testament that promote, well, maybe not necessarily promote, but they definitely inform the Israelites of how to conduct slavery. And we've come across these verses multiple times. In fact, just for shits and giggles, I'm going to get out my handy-dandy notebook where I have all my favorite controversial Bible verses listed. And, it's the second page. Slavery. Oh, yes. So, slavery, we have Exodus 21, 1 through 11, Leviticus 25, 44 through 46, Numbers 31, 17 through 18, Deuteronomy 20, 11 through 15, Deuteronomy, some of these are out of order, apologies, Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 12, and, oh yes, special reference there because they're leaving out Gentiles. Gentiles don't go free. in that particular passage. Deuteronomy 21, 10 through 14, that is specifically about what to do if you want to make a wife of a slave, particularly a Gentile slave. And then we have today's mention, all these references that I just read off to you, they're generally in how to conduct slavery. And I mean, this passage here in chapter 23 is no different. But it throws you for a loop, because all these other verses are painting slavery overall in a negative light. And here, honestly, I don't understand how it fits in anywhere. Because we've also had passages where it talks about, if you discover your neighbor's donkey, or ox, or sheep, or coat, even, anything that belongs to someone else, you, as a fellow Israelite, are supposed to take care of it, and see that it gets back to their owner. If it's an animal, you treat it as your own and everything. Which is, pretty good idea, if you think about it, sort of. I don't know how the heck God/Moses expected to turn all of Israel into a truly honest lost and found, but hey, credit for trying, right? Well, in a society that promotes and, in fact, depends on slavery, you would think that God would say the exact same thing about returning lost animals and items and shit like that to their masters. You'd think he would say the exact same thing about runaway slaves. He doesn't. This is what he says. Verse 15 of chapter 23, he says, "Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which is escaped from his master unto thee." You don't return runaway slaves. It doesn't even say what kind of slave, if they're Israel or Gentile. Of course, it's possible if we went into the original language, perhaps there is a form of the way slave is written, or a missing word or something that alludes to what race the slave is, but we are not given a hint here in the English version, so we kind of have to go with what we got. So much for God is not the author of confusion. Certainly into allowing it to happen, depending on human fallible, corruptible hands. Not only do you not return an escaped slave, but it says in verse 16, "He shall dwell with thee, even among you in that place which he shall choose." I'm wondering if this only applies to the males. I don't know. But yeah, you don't return the runaway slave. You let him live wherever he wants. Where it liketh him best. Oh. In that place which he shall choose, in one of thy gates. Where it liketh him best. Thou shalt not oppress him. And what exactly does that mean? In that place which he shall choose in one of thy gates. The gates of a city was the place where people would make a lot of important decisions. Political, business, marriage. It's where people would go to get their marriage licenses and divorces taken care of and shit. So it's an important place that a servant is allowed to choose from where he lives, even if, what does this mean? He can pick a place where someone's already living and they have to get out? I don't know. We're not really told. We're just given these 2 verses about it. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, it's great if we didn't have all the laws about slavery already in the Bible, this would be awesome. Like, yeah, make Israel the nation where slaves don't exist. That'd be great. I mean, hey, it'd be great if we had any country like that, to be honest. It'd be nice if all countries pushed towards that, but, unfortunately, slavery is something that is still very much present in our world, both in an old-fashioned sense and in a new-fashioned sense. But yeah, thou shalt not oppress him. Like, what? A runaway slave, really? Of all the things you gotta return, the human being, the most valuable asset that you could use as a commodity, is the one thing you don't return that runs away? Well, heck, why don't all the slaves just run away? Solve all the problems right there. But no. Of course it's not that simple. Don't know why. But those are the 2 verses we have on slavery. I can't really add this to the list of, I could add it to the list of references talking about slavery that I have, but these aren't really, like, this is positive. Like, what the fuck? This is the most positive thing the Bible has to say about slaves. Like, no, seriously, this is even more positive than the New Testament. I just remembered there's a passage in the New Testament by the Apostle Paul, I believe. I can't remember where it says it, but he's saying, slaves, be obedient to your masters. Some people say, oh, well, he was talking more about hired people. He wasn't actually promoting slavery, or he was actually promoting the work ethic attitude. That's what he was really promoting, and whatever. You can argue about that all day, but honestly, it doesn't top this right here, where Moses / Yahweh says, no, it's good. If they run away, don't return them. Was it like a rare thing for people to escape, and so they promoted that shit instead of, I don't know. I really don't. Like, these are one of the problems with the Bible. Like, you could not build a society, a profitable or good society based on the rules of the Old Testament. You just can't. You can't. It would not be moral. It would not be just. It would be incredibly corrupt. Just taking it word for word in English. And if God's word was, if this was really God's word, then he should make it a little bit easier to transfer into languages. He shouldn't have picked such a complicated language for this religion to start out in, so that we wouldn't be constantly getting lost and having to backtrack and stuff. But, we have cults. We have Christian cults that don't have time for that, so that makes it easy to poke holes in their beliefs. That's part of how we know that it's fake. You remember those verses that we occasionally come across that seem to kind of point out that Yahweh's not the biggest fan of homosexuals? Well, we have another one. Two, in fact. And I did look this one up to try and get a little more information out of it. Because, of course, Christians that don't want to accept that Yahweh was a terrible deity and was most definitely was probably most definitely against homosexuals. They don't want to admit that, so they, I feel like they kind of bend over backwards in coming up with these explanations, trying to explain their way out of corners. And if it was just one or two verses, I would lean towards their point of view. But we just keep coming across them. These verses that are just so questionable. (16 and 17). No, I'm sorry, 17 and 18. There shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. Now, it's interesting because sodomite is not capitalized here. Maybe that's an accident. I don't know. But when I dove into the other people's explanations of it online, some people argued that the term sodomite here is being used as to mean male prostitute. And, interesting concept. And that's, that is a possibility. I'm sure male prostitutes existed back then. But we do need to remember that this was a predominantly male-run society and era. And so there would not be a whole lot of women hiring male prostitutes. There would not be a very big market for that. But if there were rich people who happened to be gay or bisexual, well, then they might have to talk about that. And that same area, they're neighbors. The Arabs, well, those are the that's the race. They're not the Arabs necessarily. More specifically, the Muslims. They have a very, very clear opinion of what they think of homosexuals. And the more extreme the version of Islam, the harsher, to the point of unaliving, the punishment for being homosexual is. And you can quote me on that. But what makes me personally lean towards this referring to homosexuals and not just male prostitutes? Well, verse 18, thou shalt not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog into the house of the Lord thy God for any vow, for even both these are abomination unto the Lord thy God. It's the name calling. That's honestly what does it for me. We have seen evidence in other passages that women are treated like a product. They literally say, there's a literal verse in the Bible about selling one's own daughter. Nothing about selling one's own son. but there is a verse specifically designated discussing selling one's own daughter and the rules surrounding that action. And so when they are talking about women here, the hookers, yeah, they're using the regular term, thou shalt not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog. What does that mean? And this is also what other scholars, they still argue that it was a male prostitute. And honestly, you could definitely think of it that way. Because here's the thing. There were other nations around them that would have, as part of their priestly order, male and female concubines. People there for intercourse as part of the religious rituals. And, depending on the religion, where you were, all that jazz and jizz, you could have male and female. And it could easily refer to both straight and gay intercourse. And that and you, I think you did have to pay. I don't know the rules. Don't ask me. I was never part of such a religion. Damn it. Just kidding. Why'd I have to be in the boring version? The evolved, sexless version. No, just kidding. I do not want to be part of an actual cult. Fuck that. I was already part of a boring one. I don't need to be in a worse one that would. No. But the price of a dog is what I'm getting at. Because dogs were pretty looked down on. And it's like they're putting a dog, they're not even calling them a human, they're calling them a dog. These male prostitutes being called a dog. Why are they being called a dog? If it's just for straight intercourse, why are they being called a dog for it? What if the women are having gay intercourse, these hookers? What if they're getting it on with a woman? Are they in trouble for that? Are they called dogs for that? We're not told that they are, but the males that do that sort of thing, they are called dogs. That is how low on the totem pole they got put. Lower than women that, according to Yahweh, are just equal to property. Male prostitutes, or what would make more sense, homosexual prostitutes. Dogs. Deuteronomy 23, 18 and 19. 17 and 18. I'm getting my verses wrong today. Woo! Must be the edible I had before coming down here. Finally kicking in. But yeah, that's what you have. Read it for yourself. Deuteronomy 23, 18 and 19. People will argue to the end of the day that it's all about the prostitution aspect of it. Then why are the men called dogs for it? Because they're supposed to know better or whatever? Because they're held more accountable? Yahweh has some pretty horrible reasoning. So yeah, maybe. Maybe it's just male prostitution. But I don't feel like it is. I feel like it is the combination of the prostitution and the homosexual. In fact, you could even say, like, from what it looks like to me, personally, it looks like to me that 17, verse 17 is referring more to general hookers and sodomites, while 18 is referring more to the religious aspect of bringing the religious hookers, male and female, into the temple. You put them together, it sounds like they're, I mean, you could say one's echoing the other just with more detail, but honestly, it looks to me like it's two relatively separate occasions connected by the same activity. And they specifically refer to Sodom, which, and people, for some reason people argue about that too. I don't know where to stand on that, because I'm no scholar myself. And people are going to argue both ways all day. So it's like, well, where can you stand? But the general vibe that came from it first, and what we are presented today, both by the average practicing Jew, as well as their neighbors, the Muslims, I feel like it makes complete sense that we can conclude that this is referring to homosexuals. And honestly, I think these modern Christians that try and argue that Yahweh is fine with homosexuals need to really just stop. In my opinion, they really need to just look at everything before jumping to conclusions. Maybe even take a second look at the religion itself and the Jewish religion, and maybe they're not as connected as what we think they are. Maybe Yahweh isn't Jesus' daddy. Ever think about that? Like I've said before on this channel, I'm not a Christian myself, but there's so much more on Jesus out there than what average Christians know, because they just refuse to do the research. They refuse to believe. They think the missing years of Jesus are actually missing. They're not. And honestly, I do think Christianity should be accepting of homosexuals. It makes sense, especially when you put it in the light of the verse, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. That makes complete sense. That verse does not at all fit with the Old Testament style of how they treated their enemies. There is no do unto others as you'd have them do unto you when it comes to the Ammonites, or bastards, or sodomites, or witches, or people that have their own system of magic. Kill them all. Don't let them be born for 10 generations. Or don't let them become part of my chosen people for 10 generations, because who they happen to be born to offended me thousands of years ago. And don't even try and look for their peace and prosperity. Yeah, Yahweh and Jesus are not one and the same. They're not, there's no way they could be related. They're just made to look that way, because they got slapped together in one book by a government that wanted you to think that they're all one, that they're connected. But they're not. Jesus is just the juice that keeps y'all coming back. And the Old Testament is what keeps them angsty and divisive. And then, as if we needed another reminder that the people of Israel, well, I should say the children of Israel, aka the children of God, the Jews, in this case. I prefer to say Jews. I mean, I try not to interchange them, but it's gonna happen. The Jews feel this way because this is what they are told in the Bible. We have further evidence of it. Right here in verse 19 and 20. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon at usury. Now, what does the word usury mean? Interest. That's right. You pay someone money, like, this is literally where interest comes from. This is the origin of, well, maybe not the origin, but part of the massive origin of banks and their concept of interest. When they lend money to you and you have to pay them back over a long period of time, there's interest that's put on it. And you have to pay back. Don't ask me a specific case or anything. This is just a general thing. This is how interest generally works. You have to pay back so much percent of interest, 10%, 12%, whatever you agree with them, with the bank. And that is exactly what is going on here. Except they are saying, do not charge interest if you lend money to a fellow Israelite. That is literally what's saying here. And how do we know that is the case? Because in the very next verse, because, not everyone is Israel's brother. We're not all meant to see each other and love each other and do unto others as we'd have them do unto us. Oh no, not if we're the Israelites, not if we're the Jews. Verse 20, unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that thou settest thine hand to in the land whither thou goest to possess it. But oh man, when it comes to that stranger, fuck that guy. Charge him interest as much as you want. And that, my friends, is how you bankrupt a society. You go in with your nation of people, you set up business, you charge your own people that that you're in connections with in the business industry, you charge them a cheaper rate. But everyone else that's outside that private circle, they get the high rate. They get the high rate. And then that money comes in, it circulates between the people that do not overspend on each other, that keep it cheap between each other. They keep that money circulating, and that money grows and grows and grows while everyone else out there gives it away. That's ultimately what you have going on here. That's how Israel basically became the richest people in the world. Because that's how their banks run it. Pretty much. I'm no banker. You know, believe me, I've had other people, you know, conspiracy theorists say all this shit to me. The Jews run the world and the banks, blah, 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 blah. And honestly, I don't have to listen to them. I don't have to listen to their details because their details could be wrong. But I know that ultimately, you know, they are right. Because the blueprint for how they did it is right here. In the Bible. In every fucking hotel room. Pretty much. Maybe not every hotel room, but wherever there's a Gideon Bible. And those things are everywhere. So yeah, there's a lot of places that have the secret to becoming the wealthiest nation in the world. And the Jews have already done it. And then we come to the final, just 2 bits I'm going to try and scoot through here. Because this turned out to be a pretty long video, as they usually end up being. And here we have, it's basically, I mean, it's fairly good, I suppose. I mean, I highlighted it in green. But here's why I'm making all the head nods out of, like, confusion and curiosity. All it says is, verse 21, when thou shalt vow a vow unto the Lord thy God, thou shalt not slack to pay it. For the Lord thy God will surely require it of thee, and it would be sin in thee. But if thou shalt forbear to vow, it shall be no sin in thee. What's he basically saying? He's saying, keep your damn promises. Keep your word. Why? Because it would be sin. That's all we got. No, it would ruin your reputation. No, people wouldn't trust you. No, it's a bad habit that can get you in deep shit if you do it too much, because hiding lies are fucking difficult. No kind of logical reason why. It's a sin. It would be a sin. But if you don't make a promise, then it's not a sin. Oh, you fucking dare, Yahweh. Couldn't have figured that one out on my own. Like, I love how he does that sometimes. It's like, to do it is a sin. To not do it is not a sin. Thank you, Captain Obvious. So, I mean, you really have to dig it apart to get anything good out of it. You have to be metaphorical about it. You have to know what sin means. You have to have... You might have to have multiple understandings of what the word sin could mean as well. Because sin, at its basic form, it just means to miss the mark. And I'm not exactly sure what the original word would be, because I'm pretty sure the word sin is a Greek word. So okay, we're not going to get into that. But, yeah, you could dive into that metaphorically. Yeah, it means to miss the mark. Yeah, you're missing the mark with your reputation. You're missing your mark with being a good person. You're missing your mark with making God happy? But that's the only thing that matters to God in this passage. Screw your reputation. Don't make it about being smart and, preserving yourself. It's, looking out for others, having some frickin' empathy, thinking about other people's position in being lied to. There's nothing about that. No. It's all about me, 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 me. It would be a sin to me. It would hurt my feelings. Fucking asshole. That which is gone out of thy lips, thou shalt keep and perform, even a free will offering, according as thou hast vowed unto the Lord thy God, which thou hast promised with thy mouth. That's all he's got. He's got, you better do it, because it's a sin if you don't. Wait. Yeah, if you don't follow through. If you don't do it at all, that's not a sin. Just in case you thought not making a sin... Sorry, just in case you thought not making a vow was a sin, I'm here to tell you, it's not. Wow. I'm glad God is only half illogical. And then I do not know how to feel about this last one. This last bit, it kind of throws me off. It sounds great. And, especially in these hard times, I'd probably take advantage of it. But, well, in a way, we have our systems of free food and shit like that for people that don't make a whole lot of money. But, and this is actually one of those things. But would this not also potentially wreck a society? There's not a whole lot of boundaries put on it. And it's just 2 verses. Maybe the experts that know a thing or two about the rules of society in these areas might have a word to say. But, if these are the only stipulations that you're given, and you lock it down to just these 2 verses, wouldn't this fuck up a society? I feel like it would do something very bad. So let me share this with you. It actually, some might even say it sounds a little communistic. But here's what it says. When thou comest into thy neighbor's vineyard, then thou mayest eat grapes, thy fill, at thine own pleasure. But thou shalt not put any in thy vessel. Okay, maybe not completely common. When thou comest into the standing corn of thy neighbor, then thou mayest pluck the ears with thine hand, but thou shalt not move a sickle upon thy neighbor's standing corn. And that's it. So yeah, this is not saying it's for poor people. There are passages and rules about poor people being allowed to eat the scraps that fall or that are left behind by harvesters, and how harvesters are not supposed to harvest the corners of their fields because those are reserved for the poor people as well. And there's the poor people, motherless, widows, whatever. I can't remember the whole list of them, but there's a small list of people that this applied to. People, needy people, basically. And that's great, right? Yes. And I didn't have any issues with those because it was for particularly needy people that were outlined for. But this... I'm sorry, but with what we got here, anyone's allowed to do it. So, by these rules, anyone and everyone could go out every day if they wanted to and just had a buffet. Okay, or maybe not an entire buffet, but people would just be able to go out and grab food, whatever. I mean, yeah, you're not allowed to gather it and take it with you, but you can have it. You can have like a handful to eat your fill. Literally, is how it is put for the vineyards. I mean, maybe the corn. Maybe the corn is only limited to two. One for each hand. But I mean, come on. If everyone decided to be a dick and all do this every day, or not even every day, just every other, like on some kind of a regular basis. They wouldn't even have to do it the majority of the week if everyone participated. The people who own those fields would be screwed over. They would have nothing left. Because everyone would be, I mean, yeah, this is supposing everyone's not greedy and everything, but hey, things could happen. Economy changes. Do they have guards and rules for that? Like, there's no punishment given for if you break this law. It's actually That's actually interesting how little that occurs. There are portions where God says, "Hey, this is what you get if you do what I tell you." And then where he also says, "And this is what will happen if you don't, and it's gonna be fucking bad." And it usually is. It is awful. But there's so many times where God puts down the law and doesn't say what the punishment is for breaking that law. And I just find that kind of curious. There are times where he says how to punish certain things. And as we've seen in episodes before, it can be pretty horrific and violent. But we don't get to know what the punishment is for everything, I guess. Or maybe Moses just hadn't come up with that one yet. I mean, there's a lot of rules in that case that he has not come up with for what the punishments are. Maybe he's leaving that up to the elders. Who knows? But we are not told. It is curious. But you know what? But then why didn't God just give it to them all at once? So many questions and no God to answer them for us. We are left to figure out these puzzle pieces ourselves. The fact that it's a puzzle piece definitely kind of makes me feel like it's not from God. I mean, if God cares that much about our salvation, he shouldn't be making it this complicated. He shouldn't be allowing humans to fuck it up if it's that significant of a thing for us to know. Or if it's that, I don't know, that level of education that we need. Somehow I think the way God wants us to live shouldn't be that complicated. I think it really just narrows it down to treat thy neighbor as you would treat thyself. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It's really that simple. Why does it have to have an entire religion behind it? Why do we have to guilt trip people for failing? When, yes, everyone fails, but really the only people that are the big problem are the people that don't try and fix themselves or that don't try and do better. The ones that are completely out for themselves are the real problem. We all make mistakes and we can point fingers all day, but the ultimate thing is, if we are not trying to be a better person, then we are part of the problem. Which means if you are trying to be a better person, then you are part of the solution. And those are really the only two type of people in the world. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. And I hope you will join me next time for chapter 24. It should be fun. There's laws about divorce, a man taking new wives, all kinds of crazy logic to follow. I have a lot of highlighted green, and I haven't read this chapter in a long time, so it should be fun. I'm also seeing some questions that I wrote down, so there's definitely some wild shit. But, funny enough, it appears to be an overall positive chapter. So, do come for a curiously positive time. Until then, my friends, stay safe, and until next time, farewell.